Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, as always joined by the head of sport in Nina Guardian, Shane Brophy, and it's a somber Tippcast this week. Well, certainly for certain aspects of it, Shane. We will talk, of course, about some of the positives, which is what's going on underage, so there's green shoots there. But we have to start with what happened with the senior team and 4:30 to 1:20 at home to Cork. Not many positives to take out of that.
No, we discussed it before. It's weird. Just I was back in Laura last night for a training session, and we're just chatting. It's somebody put it to me. It's kind of a state of shock at the moment. I think we've always known the last few years that we've slipped from where we were for about 15 years. But I think, I would probably always be the half glass full merchant in terms of say, look, we have the players. It's just if you get a proper system and structure in place, and I think there's it's finally a realization. Okay, now things are we shouldn't be losing by 18 points, but we have fallen off the pace in Munster considerably. I was trying to think, there are 5 stages of grief. I think we're in the first one at the moment. So will the anger come next Sunday if there's no response? That's why I think next Sunday is absolutely huge. If there's more of the same next Sunday, how do this group of players and management go forward? Like even if it's absolutely huge, there has to be a response in some way. And if there's not, how do the management go forward with the same group of players? How do the players trust the same group of management? So I think it's absolutely huge what's coming next Sunday for Tip.
Yeah. Can you take any positives from that performance? I'm trying to look around. I have the match program here, of course, and I'm looking through it, and God, there really isn't much at all.
I don't know what you think. I think you were over in the Canaan stand for the match. I was in the ring. I thought we were, even though we were toe-to-toe Cork in the first half, I always thought we were treading water to a certain extent. I thought Cork were playing on the front foot a lot of the game. Like we were getting our scores, but I thought Cork were getting theirs an awful lot easier. We weren't laying a glove on them, and I said it in my analysis piece. I think the free count figures stand out for me, that Tipperary only conceded 8 frees, and you think, okay, that's a great stat, but sure, we couldn't get close enough to Cork players to even foul them. That's why we only conceded 8 frees. Cork conceded 15. Why? Because they brought an intensity and work rate that really got in our faces, and it's this lack of. I thought we were better than we were against Limerick, even though the scoreline is worse. But just that. When the third goal went in, the white flag went up, and it wasn't actually that Cork were showboating towards the end. They absolutely ruthlessly put us away. So you couldn't actually say they were just hitting shots from any angle and they're all going over. No, they played at 100% right to the final whistle. And look, it should have been a 21-point defeat. That Pat Horgan goal that was ruled out, that should have been allowed as well. It could have been an awful lot worse. It's just, I don't know what you think. We're just copping these defeats too often. You think it was, 12 points to Cork 2 years ago, 18 this year. Limerick, 15 points. We lost to Clare by 8 2 years ago. We lost to Waterford by 6 last year, but it felt an awful lot worse was that we were out-hurled completely. It's just, we're playing second fiddle to everybody in Munster. We're playing to their tune. We're not bringing anything to these games. So
we're the whipping boys at the moment. Let's call it.
I put that was my headline on the paper this week. No pleasure in doing it, but when you have a minus 33 scoring average after 3 games, no disrespect to Carlow and Antrim and Westmeath, they're the kind of scoring averages that those type of teams get from Tier 1 counties. That's not the type of scoring average that a so-called established Tier 1 county should be at after 3 games. And look, it potentially will get worse next weekend. I hope we get a reaction, but I only see a clear victory because like they're coming to Thurles with everything to play for, like, so they'll be coming at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, do you know, I was chatting to a friend of mine last night, went for a few pucks with a friend of mine last night, and we were going on about like the mood around it. So you go in there, it feels like 8, 9, 10 to 1 Cork supporters are in Semple Stadium. So the mood isn't great in the first place. And when you even get into your head that, geez, Tip will have to quieten the away crowd, I mean, so that's not good. Like the Tip supporters had voted with their feet. They weren't getting behind this team, which is something that, you know, people on an individual level, maybe they'll reflect on that and maybe they will, maybe they won't. But, you know, at this stage now, after that defeat, it's the lack of hope that kills you. They often say it's the hope that kills you. It's the lack of hope. Because you're wondering, where does it go with this team? And it's not like every one of these players has suddenly become very poor. But it's like, why are so many players performing so far beneath their own level? Like, if you talk about some of the players that were there in 2016 and 2019 and, you know, have had some really good days in the Tipperary jersey, like, is there any reason you can think that all of these players are playing so far beneath themselves?
Sure, one, it has to be a lack of confidence. And like me and you were at the same post-match interview on Sunday, and that question was posed to him, and Liam more or less rejected it, and more or less said that what they're doing in training is top class. But I suppose I just wonder, is our training compatible to what's required for senior inter-county hurling? That'd be I would look at Brian O'Mara and Gerard O'Connor and the likes of Carl Gwynn, the lads who played Fitzgibbon hurling. They were absolutely humming back in February and March. Remember that, when the Fitzgibbon was going on?
Yeah.
But since the Fitzgibbon has ended, their form has regressed massively. And it makes you wonder, like, were they more in tune? Was the game more suitable to them through college? Like, they seem to be up to speed when the college season was going on. But since the college season ended, their form has fallen away. And that would be okay. It's not just an observation from my point of view. Maybe Tipperary's training is absolutely ideal, and the players are just spooked when they get out into a championship field. I don't know, but look, then against Waterford, they produced a big performance. They didn't look spooked, but then and they got sucker punched in that game numerous times. But yet, when the sucker punches came, particularly the third goal the last day, the flag went up. They did respond a little bit after the second goal. They got 2 points. They were only 4 points down, but once the third goal went in, bang.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, it just feels like, you know, and sometimes when you have these disastrous couple of results, you'd nearly feel like blaming everyone. This is wrong. I mean, how did they not spot that Cathal Barrett was injured, and how did they let him continue if he wanted to stay on? And, you know, he just conceded 2. Like, he's a brilliant player, but like conceded 2 points to Brian Hayes. Clearly couldn't move.
But that's player accountability too, though. Like,
I know, but
calling for that puck out, or Barry shouldn't have even considered giving it to him.
Yeah, and then you can say the flip side though is like, it was seen by at least somebody in the management team, you know, that this lad's hamstring had been an issue, and you're not going to run that off. I'm just going to go through some of the comments here. David Hogan, let's just talk about the minors and 20s, please. We'll get to that. Scooby says, embarrassing defeat. Ronan Horan, it's very simple. Tipped out of the players. I'll just finish these out, Shane. Not as fit as other teams, says Scooby, and lack a lot of plays compared to.
I don't think fitness is an issue. I think it's you're made look unfit when you're not confident.
Will Cahill get a third year? Asked Kevin Fenton. Scooby, if Claire Hammer's, I think Cahill's gone. Snore, so many players in the county not given a chance, just dismissed, not nurtured and coached because there's something really wrong. Playing the likes of Limerick, Clare is a massive step up from Fitzgibbon.
That's not the point I was making about Fitzgibbon. I meant their form was better.
Their form with Tipperary after being involved with Fitzgibbon during that period, Lads, the Tip support was shocking. It certainly wasn't a good level of support there the other day, and it does feel like there's just a disinterest. But yeah, I was trying to think about, you know, the way so often we talk about, well, look, the 2018 and 2019 underage teams weren't nurtured and given the chance, you know, to settle at this level. And, you know, I've made that point for a long time, and I made it during 2020 and 2021, and even in 2022, to be fair, Colin Bonner gave everyone a chance. But obviously, at some point, you have to say, okay, maybe the damage is done there, and we have to accept that generation didn't get a chance to come through, or they haven't, or maybe it's too late, or maybe some will late develop. But I was thinking about, in the meantime, what's happened with the Tipperary under-20 in the meantime, which is obviously the next step to senior. I mean, like, how much have we gotten out of the team that maybe John Devan and Brendan Cummins have had in the last few years? And 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. So you think over the course of that, whereas Cork have brought through the likes of Kieran Joyce, this is again, against teams that have played or beaten Tip. Conor Joyce, Brian Hayes, Alan Connolly, Shane Barrett, Tommy O'Connell, the two Roaches. So that was 2020. And you could say that there's, some really key players there. Then 2021, again, we look at Cork. Kieran Joyce played, but they also added in Owen Downey, Ethan Toomey, and Ben Cunningham, who we haven't seen yet, but seems a really, great prospect. So that's a lot of players for Cork. Maybe they'll all start in time, maybe they won't, but some certainly are as things stand. 2022 then, Limerick ended up being the winners of Munster that year. Kilkenny went on to win the All-Ireland, but Cathal O'Neill wasn't even allowed to play, so that, effectively decided the All-Ireland. So the players that Limerick have brought through besides O'Neill is Fergal O'Connor, Colin Coughlin, Adam English, Aidan O'Connor, Shane O'Brien, Donncha O'Donnell. That's 2022. So we're looking at just under 2 years ago. And then last year, Cork won it and Ben Cunningham was on the team. And again, we haven't seen him yet. And it's very early for a 2023 player from the under-20s. But from Tipperary during that time spell, so 2020, you would think players have had a chance to mature. And what we've gotten from that team is Owen Connolly, Gerard O'Connor, Conor Bowe, who are all starting. And then you've Andrew Orman, Johnny Ryan, who started against Limerick, and Sean Ryan. Okay, so you think that's a decent haul. Half of those are starting grand. Then 2021, Dara Stakelum and Sean Hayes are the only lads that are currently in the shake-up with the seniors. 2022, Dara Stakelum and Sean Kennelly, who was a sub in that under-20 team and came on. 2023.
John Campion is in the squad, but he's not.
So I'm only talking about players who are actually featuring. And then 2023, Dara Stakelum and Sean Kennelly. So between 2021, 2022, and 2023, Dara Stakelum was on all three. He's through. Otherwise, you're looking at Sean Kennelly, who came off the bench the first couple of days, and Sean Hayes, who came off the bench the other day. Tipper, obviously, you're not going to bring through 10 players from one under. But the last couple of years, when you look at what Cork and Limerick are bringing through in terms of players being used and looking like they're ready versus what Tipper bringing through, you're talking about Sean Hayes, Dara Stakelum, and Sean Kennelly, with Dara Stakelum being the only one starting in the last couple of games. That, what's the missing link there?
Well, you probably look at it and say, look, I suppose Cork have had underage success in those times, and I suppose.
But our teams aren't getting hammered now.
No. They were
we've been 14 games in that spell there.
Well, I just wonder, are Cork and Limerick, while they've got success, maybe the priority isn't success. Maybe that's been the bonus, that they're bringing through guys that they know will, once they get to 22, 23, 24, will thrive at senior level. Or that would be my guess. And I think that's because that's why there's probably a lack of hope this morning, because even though we do have good minor and under 20 teams this year, I think people are looking and thinking, God, we haven't had a return off the 16 minors and the 1920s that won All Irelands. So there's no guarantee what the success we're having underage this year will come true, and that's guaranteed. Look, there's no guarantee. We saw Limerick had the 3 All Ireland under 21s back in the early 2000s. They got nothing off it, but they did off the 2015 and 17 under 21. So it's all about nurturing that those players coming through. And look, there's no doubt that they weren't brought through. Like, some of them were like Jakes Morris, Mark Yo, very, I suppose, impact subs off the bench in 2019, but for whatever reason didn't kick on. Ger Brown as well, Jerome Cahill. The people have been critical of Liam Sheedy, why he didn't give them more game time, but maybe they just weren't the best of what was available. I suppose it's easy to blame the management and say they're not picking them, but I would ask the question: are the players going into Thurles doing everything in their power to make the management not pick them? You know what I mean? Do they expect the jersey to be handed to them, or do they want to go? Are they grabbing it? Are they really making them impossible for them not to be picked?
Yeah, or do they go in so often and realize that the same lads are going to keep getting the jersey no matter how well they play?
Yeah,
and
like
I'm not saying it's either, but by the way,
we don't know what's going on in Dr. Morris Park. Like, so.
No, but what we can judge is based on the games we do see, and like over the last number of years, the same lads keep getting the jersey no matter how bad they play. And what sort of message does that send out down through the group? Like, for example, there's one or two players that I was saying, needed to not be started in this game. And, for example, then you'll come up against the counterpoint, which is the arm around the shoulder approach, and that didn't work.
No.
And I don't think we can let the Tip GAA off the leash here either, because is all the athletic preparation right, or has it been over the last number of years? You'd hope to think. I mean, obviously you and I are not S&C experts, but
like they have. I think they're in the second year of the link with Setanta College, and I suppose that's still early days yet. So you like to think that they're getting the best of the best in terms of what's needed there. Like, but then it's up.
But S&C wasn't invented in 2022.
No, I know. But in terms of
so far behind, it feels like you look athletically at Cork, and they've had a proper athletic development link up the whole way through their GAA for a number of years.
Oh yeah,
and they're walking around us. They walked around us.
Yeah, sure, that's it. Like, sure, the free count stat is the obvious one there. We only conceded 8 frees because we couldn't get close enough to them to foul more than that. Like, so.
But like you do have a portion of blame to go out to everyone. Porter says, so who's to blame? Cahill, not good enough players. Why did Tip go through 16 years not winning a championship match during the famine? Look, we were a bit young for that.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Look, they were knockout days where if you weren't, like, there was a couple of times where Tip lost very narrowly and their year was done. Like, so look, we did probably take our eyes off the ball maybe in the 60s in terms of underage development when the golden era was on. That's what happens. Like, when you're successful, sometimes your eye can go off the ball at underage, and maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. Like, but there's no doubt that the talent level coming through. Look, we did get a golden generation off those 6 and 7 minor teams. Like, they were exceptional. Like, so that's not to say, look, we could get an absolutely huge crop off this group of minors this year, maybe in 6 and 7 years' time when they start peaking. Like, when that's still a long way off for an awful lot of those lads. Like, so, and we don't know what could happen in the meantime. But just back to the point about maybe players going into training and feeling that doesn't matter what they do, they're not going to get picked. Like, if you were to be a criticism of the manager, some of their substitutions are hard to figure out. Like, I thought Johnny Ryan was one of our better players against Limerick. Yet when Cahill Barrett got injured last Sunday, he wasn't introduced as an out-and-out cornerback. Like, it was Dan McCormack brought in and Brian O'Mara shuffled into cornerback. Maybe that was to deal with Brian Hayes, I don't know, but that was an odd one. Sean Kennelly came off the bench, very impactful against Waterford, not even brought on this time. Like, so it's just, I don't know. It's just, I just thought some of the substitutions were a small bit haphazard last weekend. Like, I understood Bonner Maher coming on because, look, I thought he'd hold the ball up. He might, and was something we were struggling to do in the second half. But then the quality of ball, like, I think that was one of my lead angles in my analysis piece. Like, and you look at the other 4 Munster counties and even all 6 Leinster counties, what's the one thing they're all doing? They're all protecting the ball. Like, none of them give anything worse than a 60-40 pass in. We're hitting so many 50-50 balls into the forwards. It's scary. That day is, and I don't know if you saw the minor match the other night. Even though we won, there was an awful lot of that going on as well. Like, if Tipperary could just, and it's actually, if we could focus on getting that part right, that would actually play into our skill set where we'd be creating more one-on-one matchups, which are better. Like, you're getting away from those crowded situations where we're not winning dirty ball or not winning the rucks. Like we're better we're better. Just say if you put that Cork style into the Tipperary players, do you not think it would get way more out of us?
Tip just seemed to be totally allergic to the simple hand pass to get you out of trouble. So someone's on the front foot to strike up the forward line. It's like galling to watch at times. I have to say. I just wonder, like Liam Cahill, if he's number one, he needs a big performance this weekend. I would imagine that if this is a disastrous performance, and we were both there for the post-match interview, and he seemed crestfallen, and you couldn't but feel sorry for any manager who goes through.
Just into it wasn't eerily similar to Colin Bonner 2 years ago. Same dressing room. It was just felt this very same.
So he needs a performance this weekend. If he doesn't, I can't imagine anybody wanting to stay going. So, but that would be up to himself. But I can't imagine he'd want to stay going. But no matter what happens, there's a big period of reflection. Does the backroom team change? Does the player turnover change? Because you could say about previous management teams, holding on to the same amount of lads too often. And what's the point in continuing to lose with the same lads when you can give experience to the next generation, even if there's a few bumps along the way? Something has to change. Either Liam's going to have to change himself, change his backroom team, or change a lot of the players, and certainly how the team is playing. And he has to figure out, is he and his, the group to do that?
Yeah, I suppose I'd say that's probably a conversation for next week after the Clare game. It's there's
but it is a reality.
It is. Yeah, I'm just not. I think it's difficult to have that conversation with one game to go. In terms of it's that's why I said at the start. I think next how we perform, how what we get next Sunday will determine an awful lot whether Liam has a future, some of these players have a future, or both are in trouble. Because, as I say, when you cross the white line, you're the one in control. Liam is not playing, Michael Beavens is not playing. Your level, those 15 players cross the line. It's the level of your level of effort, and I did think sometimes there in the second half when we're beating for a ball, we sort of gave up and let the Cork players saunter up the field. And that's, I think that was one of the galling parts of it. You can accept losing if you leave it all out there, but mentally definitely we look so fragile at the moment. It's one thing says to me that we probably will get a response that, like Waterford, 6 days, we had little time to dwell on it. We got on with it. We had 7 days this time. Maybe we'll get on with it. I don't think we'll win, but Jesus, we can't. You look at the way Clare play, they could absolutely fill it if our defence is as leaky as it was last week. Very, very open. As nice as the Cork's third goal was to see in terms of it looked lovely, but God, to be able to work the ball through the middle with not a glove laid on anyone before Alan Connolly stuck it in the net, Jesus, that was embarrassing.
Yeah, we already got a hint in O'Moore Park in the league semi-final of what Clare can do, and will somebody be holding the middle? Will we both really like Brian O'Mara? Is he going to end up cornerback again like he did that day, in a position that doesn't suit him? You have to pick players in the right. And it's easy. We don't know what the circumstances are, but it can't be like that.
Actually, the only, I suppose we will know at least. Well, there'll be at least one change with Cathal Barrett out. So you're probably looking at Johnny Ryan coming back in. You look. I suppose Liam Cahill did hint that there will be changes and giving new blood a chance. Look,
that was the swan song of Pádraig Fanning when he left Watford 2019.
Yeah.
He had a really tough Munster campaign, and he threw in all the young lads against Cork, if I remember correctly. And he got a very good performance.
Yeah, this would be like Sean Kennelly, be ideal for him. Andrew Ormond, if you think he's going to be somebody there going forward, like Paddy Cadell, you haven't seen him properly at this level. You'd even think after the league, you think Willie Connors is our player of the league. He's featured so fleetingly in the championship. It's why was he such a prominent player in the league if you didn't trust him to last in the champ? As if there was, I don't know, there was no forward real thinking, so in terms of. And then the matchups on the day, Owen Connolly was never suited to Dara Fitzgibbon.
To be fair, before coming into the match, I was
Yeah.
going through all the matchups and stuff like that, and I was like, "That's probably going to be a matchup
Yeah.
based on who we had available
Yeah.
for that." And I was like, "We don't really have a matchup for it." But I was thinking,
I thought Cathal Barrett and Brian Hayes was all wrong. Like I thought Barrett and Connolly, and it was like just to see her size of Hayes, like he's so effective. Like so.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is easy to be wise after the event, but when the ball's going in that handy. But I'm still surprised that Connolly wasn't moved to somewhere in the backs or something like that. Because I think he's been so good. But look, another thing I wanted to bring to you, when I was talking about all those players that don't seem to be coming through yet, at the very least, from the under-20 grade, the stepping stone. There's always going to be sort of, you look towards reasons why hasn't this player come through? Why hasn't that player come through? And because it's not like there haven't been other players that have had some potential. You can say fair enough, you'll always have a lot that won't come through. And I just wonder, players that were good in the last couple of years, Peter McGarry, Paddy Creedon, Jack Leamy, Kyle Shelley, Conor Cadell, and I'm just wondering,
Devin Ryan.
And the reason I specifically named those is because you're and I know the football manager Paul Kelly won't want to hear this, but these would be some of the guys that you're thinking, right, maybe they'd come through in a year or two, and they're all on the football panel now. And Conor Bowe did that for a year, and you think, okay, well, they'll do a year of S&C at a senior level, that would be good. And I just, number one, I wonder, does the S&C for football translate directly over to hurling? And I'm not entirely sure it does, because the type of running in the games is different. And number two, if you had a development panel or an intermediate championship, or if you could actually enter a second team into the Joe McDonough or something like that, I'm not saying it's possible, but if you could, a year with these players all training to be ready for, this coming year, would that be better? Or can you throw them into the hurling now after a year of Gaelic football? And I know Paul Kelly won't want to hear that.
No, but I think the likes of Jack Leamy and Peter McGarry, they were on the extended panel before Christmas, they were trialled and deemed not. I wouldn't say not good enough, but maybe not ready yet. And they are carrying an extended panel, the likes of Josh Keller and David Kelly and a few more are still there. They're still, as Liam said, they mightn't be on the full panel this year, but they're still there, and in terms of getting themselves ready for next year. But yeah, I'd say, look, ideally, you'd love to have some sort of a B grade competition. Maybe it's something the Munster Council could look into in terms of having curtain raisers for a lot of these games. If you had an all intermediate, but then would clubs be reticent in a lot of counties if you're pulling another group of players away?
There are development panels for other counties. I'd often see it when I'm working with UCD. I'll see Dublin development panel working there.
But they're still released to play county league games at a weekend when the county championship is on. Look, it is fine. Yeah, but I don't know if Tip's financial situation is the moment whether they could afford to fund another inter-county panel, because I know things are tight, and it's you think another competition, but it all costs money. All those players will get expenses. They need to have to be fed after training and stuff like that. Gear, it's easy to say there's another competition, but you have to be able to fund it as well. So maybe that's something Croke Park or Munster Council could maybe fund and take the pressure off county boards in terms of fielding, having to field another competition team for a competition, if you know what I mean. It'll be interesting. I suppose we were here 2 years ago when we were knocked out after losing 4 games and everything is wrong, root and branch review. And look, we had a better year last year. We won in the minor All-Ireland. So look, I don't think everything is as bad as it makes out, but there's no doubt the fact that it's happened for the second time in 3 years at senior level suggests that what's the transition from underage to senior, we're not bridging it correctly.
Yeah, well, that's one thing for sure. Going through those last 3 years, and we just haven't really brought through enough at all. And the lads that we're bringing through, do they look physically ready? Do they look explosively? You know, where you look at those Cork players, and you can see they're lean as butchers' dogs. They're as fast as they should be. You just wonder, are all the Tipperary players coming through looking like they're physically prepared for this level?
And like, are we? How would you say? Are we so wedded to our traditional approach? We can't see that we have to change. Like, we have to move with the times. Like, and I'm not saying. Like, and in fairness, we are still saying a progressive side. We get the ball up the field as well as possible. We're not careful of how we use it, but we're not. Our hurling is not going to get us out of problems anymore. You need athleticism to go with the hurling now. Like we'll always have hurlers in Tip, but you need to have a certain number of athletes to go with it. But you need a couple of dogs as well.
Yeah, that's just like to get to base level, you need athleticism. First touch, second hand says real identity crisis in Tip. Traditional direct style is easy in the eye, but modern tactics can circumvent it. Simple as, why do we have to be drag kicking and screaming into modern hurling? And like, I can't imagine this can't be how they want to play it.
Yeah, but you go to any club game in Tipperary, or what's the one thing? You let the ball up the field, and that's always the thing when you're try and use the ball a bit differently, and it doesn't work out. The first thing is let the ball up the field, and like that's some of it too. We go back to 2018, when I always remember that league semi-final when Limerick got absolutely walloped by Galway, and their style of hurling was breaking down. But for you to get used to something else, you're going to have to go through some difficult times before it works out, and Limerick did, and it eventually it worked out for them, and they've reaped the benefits of it.
How long do you think this period of rebuilding, and like I would imagine a few players will retire, and some of them have had brilliant careers, so we won't talk about anyone in particular, but like in terms of a rebuild, the turnover of players, it's going to take some time, because obviously, it's not like there's obvious lads ready to come through that haven't been playing the last couple of years. Anyone on this under 20 team, it'll probably take a couple of years to get up there physically, and then obviously the minors are a long way away. So it will take a long time to turn this around.
Yeah, it's not going to be a quick fix. I've got to say, at minimum, next year, if we could stop shipping the hammerings, that would be a start. Like, and you look at next year's schedule, we're at home to Limerick and Waterford, and away to Cork and Clare. Geez, like Cork are only going to get better. I don't think Clare will regress anytime soon. Limerick maybe dipping back a small bit, but not an awful lot. And Waterford, I still think there's another good kick in them. Like, even if they fall short this year, I still think there's another year or two in this group of players before maybe someone. And I'm listening to Austin Gleeson on a podcast last week. He more or less hinted that his hunger is back after watching the championship from the outside, and that he'll be back next year. So that'll be a huge shove on for them. Like, so look, if you were to say at this stage, where do you see a win coming from next year? You'd say very, very difficult. But if you got a Tipperary team playing confidently and knowing their roles and within a game plan, that's not to say you couldn't at least get us back competitive, and a bit of hunger and fire and passion and pride in the jersey every day we go. Oh, that's the minimum. Like, so, like, and look, I suppose we had ambitions at the start of the year, and I suppose we thought, and we get the management the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they went too hard too early last year just to get us ready to go. But I suppose since that Waterford game last year, it's kind of petered out, hasn't it? Like, it's never really recovered. And that kind of, you look at maybe the 2 times Waterford have been eliminated from the championship before the final game. They've always produced a performance in the dead rubber match. Like, if Tipperary don't produce it says an awful lot about her mentality within the county. I don't want to hammer it on the players and the management like that. We can summon a bit of pride to go out and represent the jersey as best we can.
And I kind of, you know that management are obviously trying to get as much as they can out of the players, and you know that the players are trying as hard as they can. But it does fall on management when you look at players and you wonder, why is this guy so lacking in confidence? Why is this guy's first touch not right? Why is he taking 2 or 3 goals to get it up? Why, when somebody gets the ball, is no one ever coming off the shoulder? That's not even a tactical thing. That's not even a modern game thing. It's just like, why aren't lads switched on to doing this, that, and the other? Why is Jake Morris playing out on the wing where he doesn't really seem to... Like, you look at the half, like, he's brilliant, unbelievable inside forward. He's still scoring 3 points again, and yet we're still feeling like, geez, he's only scratching the surface. But if you have a wing forward or a half forward line that's Jake Morris, Noel McGrath, and Jason Ford, are you really expecting to get a huge amount of tackles out of them? It's not really any of their game. Plus, obviously, Noel McGrath has been around for so long. And, you know, what a career he's had. But, like, collectively, that can't be your half-forward line if you think you're going to stop, you know, top inter-county teams. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like, if you go back to last year, our shape was... Our 2 wing forwards were, I think, Tynan and Owen Connolly. Seamus Kennedy. And your half-forward line have to be in your half-back line a lot. Again, we saw Cork there. Declan Dalton was drifting back, and like Harnedy was all up. But we've sort of moved away from that, and our half-forwards trying to stay up the field. Like, I think I think in the modern game, your half forwards nearly have to act like wing backs. Like, you're nearly out here, and if you don't drift back to help your half backs, they're going to get exposed, like Conor Bowe was in the second half when Shane Kingston, Jesus, he looked like he had. Remember, it was remarkably similar to 2 years ago when Conor Lehan nearly scored 6 points from the same spot. Like, Shane Kingston hit nearly 4 from the same spot and 1 narrowly wide. Like, so, like Carnedy was beavering around there all day. Like, just, we see, there's no doubt we don't have an identity to what we're doing at the moment. And that ultimately the responsibility falls on management. And I suppose that will be the decision that Liam Cahill, when this season is over, have to determine, am I the right man to turn this around? If I am, I've already done a root and branch review of the talent in the county last year. And in fairness, he did bring in the guts of 50, 60 players for trials and training before Christmas. So you can't go down that route again. You might pick off maybe 1 or 2 of the better under 20s, but then you look at your backroom team. Does he shake that up? I suppose, particularly, I think the one that could be the sticking point is Michael Brevens. Like, they've been joined at the hip for nearly 10 years now, since minors. They've been with the Tip minors for 4, under 20s for 2, Waterford for 3, and now Tipford. Like, that's 10 seasons. Like, if you were to... The coach is so important in this thing. And, like, I'm not saying Michael, we don't know, we're not in training to know whether Michael Bevens' coaching approach is out of date or not. But, like, if you were a manager staying on, one of the first things you would do to try and shake it up would be change who your lead coach is. I'm just wondering, would he, if that is identified, would he be prepared to do that? There's I don't know what you think. Like, I'm just throwing out, like, if everything is on the table.
Well, something will have to give. So either he has to give, the players have to give, or the backroom team has to give. So, I mean, it's simple as, because what's going on at the moment.
And then the point I made earlier on is, if you have the same, more or less, some lads might step away, but you're more or less, anybody under the age of 28, if they will probably still be good enough to be there, that are on the panel at the moment, under the age of 28. Do those players still believe in that management next year if they come back into training next November?
And how many buy-in? And if you get a defeat or 2 again, with confidence being as ropey as it is.
Yeah.
And, like, we can say,
if there's not something different, either it's the manager or the coach, or something that's going to make it feel different to what it was this year.
Yeah, and we can talk about how Sean O'Donoghue should have had a black card and we should have had a penalty early in the game. We might have gone 2 goals to 1 point ahead, and even when we conceded that third goal, or like even the goal when Barrett was injured and stuff like that, if it didn't happen, maybe you could have stayed in the game a little bit longer. But Jesus, it's cat enough when we're talking about if we could have stayed in the game a bit longer and taken the bad look off it a little bit. But sometimes maybe we just need to face up to the reality of it and be taught this lesson and be taught a couple of these lessons to realize this has to change and change totally.
So like I see there's a couple of people posting things about potential new manager. Like I'm not getting into that while there's a manager in place and we just don't know. Me and Cahill has another year. It was a 3-year term. Everything he said suggests. He's mentioned a few times. It's about this is a rebuild and it's going to take time. Like, so obviously he's in the mood to stay at it long term, but sometimes things happen within that term to maybe suggest that maybe things have to change maybe within our setup, or maybe he might have to question, am I the man to bring this one thing forward? It's so I'm not saying he is or he isn't. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate in terms of the thought process that will have to go into this over after next Sunday. And like you look at the makeup of the county board, the county board that was there in 2022 that relieved Colin Bonner of his duties and brought in Liam Cahill. A lot of the lead characters in that are gone. Like, we have a new county chairman, we have a new CEO, we have a new treasurer. Do they have the expertise or maybe the confidence to want that to make that decision? I don't know. Like, if it came to it, like, so it's that's why I think a lot of things could be answered next Sunday and how we play and how we perform against Clare. I think that will answer an awful lot of questions for people.
And Clare they weren't flawless against Waterford, not by any manner of means, but they won 421 to 226. They have a lot of classy forwards. Like, Tony Kelly's obviously not at 100%, hence why he's still only coming off the bench. Got a nice goal, but they've just so much pace, power, and it's the heads up hurling. Like, Mark Rogers playing there in the half forward line. He's just a touch class. David Fitzgerald, Shane O'Donnell.
Their two first half goals, didn't they remind you of the goals they got against us in Thurles 2 years ago, where they pulled us out of a position, but they had a runner who drifted into the empty space and he was able to be picked up like that for the Darrell Owen goal in the David. That they're prepared to I would say take risks, if you know what I mean. They're because they know, like, if you run into space, there's a fair chance somebody will pick you out. You might make that run 5 times, but you'll know if somebody spots you on one of the occasions or two, you'll be picked out.
Yeah, there's so much class in that team. Should we try and turn things around and talk about something a little bit more positive? We'll talk about the Tip minor hurlers and the excellent Munster final win over Clare on Monday night. And it was quite a tonic just watching the crack at the post-match interview where all the players came out with to douse James Woodlock in water, and he took off in a sprint. The whole thing was gas. So that was brilliant to see a victory there.
Yeah, I know. Like, just the tonic after Sunday. Look, I suppose there probably, I think James, I heard him on an interview there last night, he said there was a little bit of pressure. It was like you can the whole county after Sunday, a bit of doom and gloom. And I suppose a lot of those younger lads probably would have understood that. We have a Munster final to play in our own right, but maybe there's a little more focus on us. And then I'm led to believe of the 4, I think it was 4,200 there. It was about 3-1 Clare. Like, geez, I really do wonder what's going on with our county. That I'd say if you were to say 1,000 of those, like, they're probably all family members and of the players and maybe a few diehard supporters. Like, where's even for under 20s? Like, where are our supporters? Like, you saw 2 years ago in Kilkenny at the minor final. was about 2 or 3 to 1 Offaly. Like, are we a proper hurling county anymore? Like, it's unreal. Like, maybe we're not the diehard county we think we are, because we can't get people to go in big numbers even when we have a really good team.
Yeah, it is a strange one.
Yeah.
But we're going to go with positives. We'll stick with positives just a little bit. So it's 217 to 16 points against Clare. Owen Dutton scored 6 points. 3 of those were frees. Stephen Tobin, he was excellent up full forward. 1-3. Killian Minogue hit 1-1. Ewan Murray 3 points, and a number of other players got a point each. But Ewan Murray really does direct traffic there from centre forward.
Isn't he? He's just he's another Noel McGrath, isn't he? Like, he's just I don't think he
no
gets
pressure.
wrong. Yeah, just so composed on the ball. I think the only thing he did wrong, I think, was a ball that went narrowly wide, I think, in the second half. Like, so, but Jesus, he just a fantastic player. Like Stephen Tobin, just a live wire up front, and like, I think the only, and I'm sure it's an element they can improve on. Like, they were worthy 7-point winners. Essentially, so if they could improve the quality of ball that goes into the forwards in open play, when you have Tobin and Minogue inside, like, they'll go to town. Like, I just thought some of the ball that was going in was, again, of the 50-50 variety. Sometimes,
you know what I was saying? It was like, and look, I mean, it's a winning team. They're doing an awful lot. Huge, you're right. This is like the cream on top type thing. Coming out of the half back line, just that extra pop pass to set someone into the far 65 to deliver. And
there was a few times
50-50.
Yeah, there was a few times Billy O'Brien and Tiernan Ryan were on their own, unmarked in the middle of the field, that if you give them a short pass, and I suppose Clare were probably set up for, they probably know that if Tip get the ball in a half back line, it's probably going to come in 40-50 yard pass, so they're half backs and were able to sit back, whereas the option was there maybe for Tiernan Ryan and Billy O'Brien maybe to take a shorter pass. You could then Clare, you'd have to draw their half backs out a small bit too, like so. But I'm sure there was probably, it was a Munster final. There was probably a bit of pressure on when you're playing under a small bit more pressure. You tend maybe to take the safe option rather than the right option. And look, it worked out for us on the night. We got enough scores, 217. Like defensively outstanding, I thought. 16, I thought we were superb defensively. Just the hooking and the blocking, and I thought Cathal O'Reilly was outstanding. Like, just, he's a great leader and just always assured. Anytime the ball broke around the square, he seemed to be there mopping it up. Like, so. But no, look, in terms of after Sunday and the pressure that was on them maybe to lift the county and the pressure maybe to be the first winners of the John Doyle Cup, I'm sure there was all little bits in under 17s in the Munster final. They had to overcome all that and to win by 7 points with the potential to play better, I think is a great spot to be in.
Yeah, I'm going to give Patrick Ryan from Borris-Lee an nod as well. I thought he had a very good game back there. How far can this team go, do you think, Shane? Like, the one time that they lost was to Clare when they conceded 4 goals. Liam Murphy, I think, had been very good that day, and obviously Cathal O'Reilly did a great job in him. How confident are you of this team kicking on and making a right burst now in the All-Ireland series?
Look, I suppose the first thing I'd say is that I'm one of these people when it comes to underage hurling, that winning is not the be-all and end-all. At least what we know is that this team is competitive, like, and there's players there that have the potential to go on to senior level, which is minimum. So after this, it's what can you achieve? Look, if you win Munster, you can win an All-Ireland, as far as I'm concerned. I suppose we have the new format this year where there's 8 teams in the knockout stages. Tip are straight to an All-Ireland semi-final, so they're at least going to be in the last 4. I wouldn't rule out a third match with Clare in an All-Ireland final. I really wouldn't. I think that Clare team is a fine team. Kilkenny look very strong in Leinster. They had a big win over Galway in the semi-final last weekend. I'm not sure. Are they playing Wexford or Dublin in the final?
And you know what? I can't remember, but I'll look it up there.
So, it's not Wexford. It must be Dublin, actually. So, because Wexford are playing, I think, Cork in a quarter-final this weekend.
It's Dublin, Kilkenny, and Leinster final.
Yeah, so... But then you have preliminary quarter-finals this weekend, Galway and Waterford. I thought Waterford even though they only won one match in Munster, I thought they're pretty competitive. So, and then you have Cork and Wexford. Like, it's nearly a whole new competition now. Like, so, and Tip will probably be waiting probably 3 weeks while maybe whoever they'll be playing in the semi-final will probably have at least two matches under one, if not two matches under the belt. So, look, they're in an All-Ireland semi-final. You have to think their aim is there to win an All-Ireland. And look, we can't say we're not short of talent at underage level. Like, you could this weekend, our second under 17 team were in the Celtic Challenge final against Kilkenny. Like, so, and like, we've had Tipperary enter two teams in that Celtic Challenge. Both of them played each other in the All-Ireland semi-final last weekend. So it just shows you, and like, that's minimum. You're talking minimum 40 players if you go panel 20 each. Like, so we've had probably 60 to 70 players playing a very, very high level this year between A grade and B grade. So we're not short on talent anyway. That's for certain. It's
question
the other elements going on to senior level, like, so.
Lads, is Cummins on the minor team related to Brendan? And you should ask the same question about the young Cahill lad as well.
Yeah, the sons of the fathers. Yeah. So, yeah, I was actually wondering, was I know when Liam was speaking to his son that they were regathering on Monday, and I was saying, God, is he actually going to miss his own son's Munster final? So I don't know whether they trained early or maybe they're going to meet after. I don't know. I think he was in the Gaelic grounds, so it would have been. Look, it would have been an interesting one if he was willing to forego his son's Munster final to ensure that the Tip seniors were starting to regather for next week. So obviously they changed, or maybe he misspoke on Sunday that they were regathering on Tuesday. I don't know. Like, so it's probably only right and proper that he was with his son. Like, because look, it's family is first and all these things as well.
Yeah, look, sure. No matter what happened on Sunday, you can understand.
Yeah,
you know, things being up in the air after that. So the Tipperary under-20s this Friday against Cork in the Munster final. A Cork team that they've beaten, not just beaten, but beaten well already. But we've seen this many times over that that doesn't really, past performance isn't an indicator of future. So where do you think we're at with this? Like, they've been very impressive up to now.
Yeah, we're in the flip side of the minors where we're coming into a final having beaten the team we've played already, whereas the minors, at least they had the edge of, we lost to Clare already, we have a motivation to turn us around. Now Cork are in the opposite side now. They lost to Tip by 11 3 weeks ago, but I think as Brendan Cummins said after that match, he feels that they caught Cork on an off night, and you'd have to think that's fair enough. Like, there's an awful lot of talent on that Cork team, like the William Buckley and a few more. Like, they're excellent players, and I suppose, as River Power says, like, Patrick McCormick's loss is big now for Tip. Like, he really looked like he was humming against Clare in the first 20 minutes before he broke his thumb, and I believe his season is over. Like, so, like, he's a big loss from the full forward line, because he's a great foil for Butler, and he's a great foil for Darren McCarthy, and it'll be interesting to see where they go. Owen Craddock has tended to be the next man in, because he took McCormick's place for was the Cork game Paddy McCormick was suspended for?
He got sent off against
Limerick.
Yeah. So was it the Cork game?
It might have been the Waterford game he's suspended for, I think. But I'm not sure. Like, Craddock doesn't give you the scoring threat. He probably gives you the ball-winning ability, but it doesn't give you the scoring threat that McCormick does. It'll be interesting to see whether they decide to shake it up a bit. Would they consider moving some players around to maybe put a bit of, like, we know Adam Daly can play inside, whether they'd move him out of midfield into the full forward line or something like that. So I suppose another thing would be Ronan Connolly's fitness. He came off at half time against Clare in the last round. He didn't play against Cork in the round robin stage. So I think his presence in the half back line would be huge as well. So look, it's a game Tip can win. There's no doubt about it. Like, the beaten Cork already. It's Oisin O'Donoghue probably been our one of our players of the championship as well. Like, so it's always tough trying to come in and beat Cork a second time. So they've drafted in some of their Cork under 20 footballers. Yes, it's like, look, every game is different. It starts out 0-0, and it's like Cork have a bit of an edge, and you can be sure Ben O'Connor will be revving at home that our senior, like, and plus the Cork hurling is riding high since that under 20 match 3 weeks ago. Their seniors are flying. I'm sure the under 20s will take a lot of confidence off that too. Plus, look, it's an All-Ireland semi-final on all but name as well. The winner goes to the final against either Offaly or Dublin. So you'd like to think that Cummins will probably tap into a lot of what the minors did on Monday in terms of we have to do it for the county. You'll be the players that will probably backbone maybe the resurgence to Tip hurling, and it'll be interesting to see whether the players tap into that.
Yeah, and like you think of that game that they played on May the 3rd, it was Tipperary 320, Cork 18 points. Like it was a really, really comprehensive performance. But like you said, Paddy McCormick, the one game he missed previously, I just looked it up there, was the victory over Waterford.
Yeah, he was suspended,
And like Senan Butler scored a hat-trick in that game against Cork. He's going to be like, he's surely going to be a player that they're really going to target. And that'll mean that if he is, I still think he can have an impact in this game. Obviously, like you go out in any match and one of the main forwards is always going to be targeted. So between himself and Darren McCarthy, they're going to have to really, try and make.
Like Dara's been pretty quiet from open play. I just wonder, maybe is he better suited out in the half forward line where he can drift into space as well. Like, so a couple of commenters there about Joe Egan. Yeah, Joe's had been badly hampered by injury since last year. I believe he's coming right, but it's a big risk now if he's played very, very little, like, to throw him in it. Like, we know he's very, very talented and a great man to win the ball. Like, so whether you throw him in and to start on Friday could be a risk, but if he's ready to go, I'd be surprised if he's not on the bench.
Yeah, it'll fall on the likes of Sam O'Farrell and Adam Daly and Cathal English, I think, to win enough a ball.
Yeah.
Conor Martin probably has a big game in him as well at some stage.
Yeah. I like Martin. He's a lovely little. He doesn't like he's your sort of whippersnapper of a centre forward. He won't win you. Anything that breaks into his hands, he'll do well with. So look, I think it's a big game. Like, we know Cork are probably going to bring a big support. Like, I think the Tip, we need a big showing going in. Like, we need to. It's like not like the Offaly under 20s. Like you said, the Offaly under 20s are better supported than their seniors. Why? Because they see them as the future. If our supporters see this under 20 team as our future, we got to get in behind them in big numbers on Friday night.
Yeah. Just quickly then, the Tip senior footballers had another defeat over the weekend. This time to Sligo in Thurles. So that's 2 defeats from 2 in the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, which is I suppose the senior hurlers and footballers are nearly the very same this year. They're just really struggling for. We're sort of too easy to play against, if you know what I mean. You sort of don't know what you're going to get from one day to the next. Like, and I was up in Belfast for the Antrim game. I thought we performed pretty well. We played a nice brand of football. There was energy to our play. Then you go last week and we fall. Was it 2-11 to 4 points behind? You think, God Almighty, what's happening here? Where's the bit of energy that was there against Antrim? And it seemed to me that Sligo we seem to have changed our game plan. Like, we were a bit on the front foot against Antrim. We seemed to play very defensive against Sligo, but even at that, like, Sligo were able to pick holes around us and kick 321. So yeah, it's like they're in a tough spot now. You have 2 weeks before we play Wexford. Like, you think then Wexford gave us an awful trimming in the league a couple of months ago, and even if Tipperary win, our score difference is so weak at the moment that of the third place teams that can qualify for the knockout stages of the Tailteann Cup, we'll probably miss out again like last year. So again, they're probably just playing for pride, and maybe a lot like the county board will be reviewing maybe Liam Cahill's situation. I'm sure the football board will probably be reviewing Paul Kelly's situation, even though after 1 year, and thinking, does he deserve the benefit of the doubt after not an easy year with injuries and being appointed late, or do they feel no, we've seen enough that this is not working, and we try something else. So as much as next Sunday in terms of response from the players, whether they're playing for the manager or playing for the jersey, it'll be the same for the senior footballers, and the weekend after next and play Wexford.
Yeah, and the camogie team are getting back into action this weekend. We saw Cork beat Waterford in the Munster camogie final there the other day, but yeah, Tipper back in action.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one on Saturday at the Tip and Malbright. There's a real rivalry brewing there, and I know Waterford have our number the last few years, but you'd feel that Tipper are going to get sick of losing to this crowd now at the end, or maybe they're going to at home advantage really show something. And I think there's an undercurrent of maybe a bit of bad blood between both managements too. There's a lot of chatter after the match in gold in the Munster semi-final a couple of weeks ago, and there's going to be an edge to this game on Saturday. If I can't get to it, I'm definitely going to watch it on Camogie Association web, because I think it's a good Tipperary team we have there. And you look at this group that Tip are in, this match will determine who tops the group, and more or less has the chance, has 66% chance, of getting straight to an All-Ireland semi-final. So if you win your group, so this is a massive game. And look, Tip are going to have to end their losing streak to Waterford at some stage. So, and they have home advantage in the regs. So why not? Why can't it be this weekend? Like, was looking at some of the Waterford game against Cork on Sunday in the Munster final. Waterford played particularly well, just came up a little short. So look, they've kicked on from last year when they got to the All-Ireland final, and you look at Galway and Cork and Waterford, like there's 5 really, really good teams going for the All-Ireland. So it's one to look forward. I suppose the only thing from a Tip point of view, and it'd be interesting to see that we struggled with Waterford's defensive sweeper against in Golden a few weeks ago, and we saw it against Galway in the league final. We're not careful enough with the ball. We tend to play an awful lot of ball down the middle when we're just the opposition sweeper can be. So have we learned maybe in terms of using the ball a bit better to try and circumvent and get it into like Emer McGrath and the girl of the Heffernans, and I suppose trying to take advantage of our threats really, maybe by instead of handing maybe opposition teams the ball. And we see how effective Waterford are working the ball up the field and getting it to the likes of Beck Carton, who's very, 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 very efficient from when she gets the ball in her hand.
And then I suppose the final thing, the Tip minor footballers are out in an All-Ireland competition starting this weekend against Westmeath. That's on Saturday at 2:00.
Yeah, new Tier 3 All-Ireland competition. Tip are in that after, I suppose, losing the Darcy final. They're up against Westmeath. Westmeath had a big win over Carlow in their first round last week. So it's, I suppose, to have those extra few weeks, after extra few training sessions, extra games, it can only stand Tipperary in good stead. I think they've had a good campaign this year. They've won 3 games out of 5 in Munster. If they could get through this game, why can't they go the whole way and maybe win it out? And I suppose breed a bit of confidence to take in and make them feel that, okay, there's a future for Tip football, that some of these guys will go on to being encouraged to go play under 20 next year, or if they're eligible for minor next year, and which I think most of them are, that maybe they could go, maybe try and get in through the front door, maybe get into a Munster final itself.
Commenting by Michael Ryan. Tip have won an All-Ireland in every decade of the GAA. Tip are unique in this respect. We have 5 years to rectify this situation we're in. Can Tipperary win an All-Ireland by the end of 2029? Up against the chance.
5 years, a lot can happen in 5 years. I wouldn't rule it out. Like, it all depends on, like, if we hit on a management and a group of players who gel and perform on a consistent basis and are playing confident hurling, I can't see why not. Things can change. Like, Limerick are probably going to slip back. Cork looks strong. I think Clare looks like so much can happen. I think what about Dublin? I thought Dublin played pretty well last Saturday against Kilkenny. Just the loss of Cian O'Callaghan and just maybe the lack of out and out quality forwards in that second half probably came against them. But look, you look at their under-20s that are coming through, their minors in Leinster. I actually fancy their under-20s to beat Offaly tonight. I think, as good as the Offaly team is, I think Dublin, I'd say, could have outpowered them.
Yeah, and in Dermot O'Dooling, I think,
yeah,
like Offaly will have their work cut out to stop him tonight.
Yeah, I just thought athletically, I was watching the two games last Wednesday, and I'm not saying Offaly can't win, but they still look like chaps compared to a lot of Kilkenny lads. And there was a fair, and their goalkeeper Liam Hoare was their man of the match. So look, they're going to have a huge. I'd still think I wouldn't be surprised if the support base maybe is a big help to Offaly tonight, and they might sneak through. But I just think if Dublin get into a flow tonight they look like a more athletic team than Offaly, that could be the difference. Even though I think Offaly probably are a better hurling team, but if that's enough, I don't know. I know Offaly are favourites, but God, I fancy Dublin. It was like they overturned a massive score against Galway, didn't they?
They did,
I think Galway were missing some key players, admittedly, but
everyone's always missing somebody, though,
Yeah.
aren't they? And do you know, I'm going to miss those matches tonight. Going to the Europa League final, believe it or not.
I was trying to get tickets for that, and
I only bought them on Sunday.
Yeah, I actually got offered them, but they only offered me single tickets, and I said that's no good to me. If I was going, I'd need to go with somebody like so. I'd love to experience a cup final like.
You want to see Xabi Alonso because you want him in with Liverpool.
I always have a soft spot for Atalanta as well, like, because like a couple of years ago when they got to the Champions League semi-final, they played some great stuff, like so. I look forward to that tonight. So just back to the senior, who's going through on Sunday in Munster?
Oh, I would imagine that Limerick are going to beat Waterford.
Yeah.
I don't think by all that much. To be fair to Davy Fitz, he's gotten a fair old tune out of the team in the championship, so that'll probably ensure he'll stay there for year 3 anyway. I think Clare are going to beat us, and
Limerick Clare final, Cork in third.
I'm sorry?
Limerick Clare final and Cork in third.
Yeah, I think so. And I actually would, assuming that things don't conspire against them, I think Cork are going to be very hard to stop this year. I have to say, because by the game, they're getting stronger. They look like they're only growing. Whereas, obviously we look like we're struggling the more we play. And like all the injuries Limerick are getting, is it going to catch up with them?
Like I know it's just a few weeks. If you're Limerick, if you're Laois or Offaly, do you want to be playing Cork after a McDonagh final? No, because they're absolutely going to mow you down. Like, it doesn't matter who. Like, it doesn't matter if you're coming out of it off a loss or defeat. They're going to mow you. Like, and they're
Alan Connolly. I mean, what a superstar he is. If injuries hadn't slowed him up the last 2 and 3 years, I mean, I hope there's a couple of young Tipperary players that have been injured the last couple of years that I'm not thinking of that can come on next year and do some damage for us. But my God, what a star he is. Yeah.
And just looking at Leinster, like Kilkenny are already they're in the top 3. It's determined whether they're 1, 2, and 3. So,
do you know, it's very similar to 2019 because back then Galway had to go to Dublin and Wexford were hosting Kilkenny, and they were all on, I think, 4 points that day, because I think they all finished on 5, didn't they?
All finished on 5 because there were 2. Dublin beat Galway.
Dublin beat Galway
on 5. Yeah,
they all finished on 5. Sorry, my apologies. But Carlow, the fact that they kept it pretty tight against Galway ultimately meant that the score difference knocked out Galway. And that day, it was a Galway man, Matty Kenny, who knocked out Galway. And this time you have Micheál Donoghue, who was on the wrong end of it that day, trying to knock out his home county in Galway. So that adds a lot of spice to it. And it hasn't been going brilliantly for Henry Shefflin. He's in year 3. A lot will be dictated based on the result in this game.
Yeah, there's pressure on, isn't there? It's
win or bust, actually.
Like they were in an arm wrestle with Antrim up to the red card last Saturday, like, so they probably would have gone on and won it, but not by the margin they did. Like, and it's like the old days with Antrim. They always throw in a silly red card, which undermines a lot of their good work, and they knew they were gone after that. Like, so, I I probably think Antrim will probably stay up ahead of Carlow, which will be tough on Carlow. But
do you think so?
Yeah, I think home advantage will probably be enough. Like, so then that brings. I think Pearse Stadium will swing at Galway's way, but the fact there was a small Micheál Donoghue's with Dublin, there was a nice little bit of undercurrent in the league match a few weeks ago.
4 red cards.
I'm actually glad RT have chosen this one over Kilkenny and Wexford. Was like that could be fun now.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think Cian O'Sullivan's loss will be too much.
Yeah, but like Paul Crummy, I think could have an impact as well. But then again, he could be the type of player that somebody like Daithí Burke wants to wrestle with.
It's just
sorry, go ahead.
Because and even I thought they used Cian O'Sullivan all wrong last weekend. Like they weren't hit. How was it? Paddy Deegan was sitting so back. O'Sullivan was cut out that he should have been out in the half somewhere, and maybe you put Ronan Hayes inside if you wanted some. It was like some of the ball that was going in direct was very, very poor.
Yeah, and if Ronan Hayes could actually catch fire, because he's one of these hot and cold type players. He got into the goal scoring positions against Kilkenny, just couldn't finish him off. Another day he'd score a hat trick against you. So if he has a go one day, that could turn things.
Donald Burke had a great first half, but he's not 100% in terms of his stamina work. Like he wasn't really impactful in the second half apart from frees. So you probably think he doesn't have a 70-minute game in him yet. So, but I think there's a lot for Dublin to build on. I thought their halfback, I thought Conor Donoghue was unreal last weekend, and Conor Burke's a class act, and young Doyle is very raw, but by God, when he settles down, Paddy Doyle, he's going to be a great bit of stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Anything else before we finish up, or have we all said at this stage?
I think we've all said, and sure we'll back for the full post-mortem next week. So,
oh God Almighty! Look, hopefully Tip produce some sort of a performance at the weekend. Thanks very much, Ben. We'll chat to you next week.